Okay, so on behalf of the BFE, I'd love to welcome Rob. This is our very first life coaching session that we've done. We really appreciate your time, Rob, talking to us tonight. So that's it. Over to you, Rob.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Lindsay. So you're all aware of what you're here for. It's for a session I'm going to be delivering to help you to overcome your freelance anxiety. Just going to talk through some domestics first of all. Obviously, welcome to you all. If you've not got a pen and paper to hand, I suggest you go and get one. I will be asking you to make a few notes and come up with some of your thoughts. And throughout the session, I'm going to ask if you can share, if you want to share some of your thoughts as you go through. No pressure on doing so because it may be personal, but by sharing your ideas, it may help others to get some inspiration for what you've said. Okay. And at this point as well, I'm going to ask everybody if they can please mute themselves, if you've not already. Apart from me, Lindsay, you can stay on as you want to as well, because you may want to add anything that's relevant. And I'm also going to stop my own video as well, because you don't actually need to see me. You've seen me already. If you want to keep your video on, you're more welcome to. I've actually realised that I can minimise you, so you're all minimised. So it's up to you what you do with the image now. But you should all be able to see my screen and hear me. We've also got the chat bar on the screen as well. Hopefully you can all see that. But if you can't, if you go to the top, well, on my screen you go to the top. On more, it drops down to the chat bar. So with the chat bar, I'm going to ask if you have any questions, feel free to pop them on there. Can't guarantee I'll be able to answer them all. If you do ask a question, can you make it relative to what specifically you're asking about? So maybe the question 2 minutes after you put it on there. And I will also ask if you have any personal questions around anxiety. So that's relevant to you and your situation. This isn't the place to ask the question. It's just general questions around the subject we're covering, please. If it's something that's personal, that's something we need to take up on a one-to-one basis, okay? And we've also put aside 1 hour for this session. Okay. So it's not uncommon that people are working in a freelance situation come up with anxieties. And we all, myself included, I am self-employed, and with the life coaching, it's finding the coaches, the clients, I should say, that are required to generate my income. And once you've got some clients that everything's good, and then those clients start dropping off because they've had their value for money and they've moved on, you then have got that lull. So it's quite common for people in our situation to feel anxiety of, I'm coming towards the end of a job, what's going to happen next? So I've got some examples on the screen that you may relate to. For example, my contract ends next week, next month, in a fortnight. How long will I have to wait to find the new one? Just a reminder, if people could, somebody not muted, if you wouldn't mind. Lindsay, might actually be yourself, because I've got a bit of feedback coming. It's a bit irritating. If you wouldn't mind just checking that you are muted, please, actually. Thank you. Oh, that's better. The other, you may find yourself questioning that you're going to have to take on the next opportunity that comes along, whether I like it or not. And won't be surprised if the majority of you haven't found yourself in a position where you've taken a job, not because you want it, but because you feel that you need it. Another thing that comes into your mind may be, I'm not good enough to get the job that I want. What if they don't like my work? And another big one is, why didn't that opportunity come up when I was available? So you can imagine your dream job that you've always wanted to get, but by potentially taking that job you didn't want, you miss the opportunity to come up with the job that you want. And again, that can also heighten anxiety with, did I make the right decision? What am I doing? What I'd like you to do is just take a moment to consider what your anxiety is, what kind of thoughts go through your head, what keeps you up at night, what kind of anxiety do you find yourself repeating every single time the same situation comes along? What I will also say at this point as well is that the anxiety we're going to talk through is focusing on the situation that freelancers find themselves in, but it may also be anxiety outside of your life. So it may be your social anxiety, meeting new people. People have anxiety leaving the front door, going to work, meeting colleagues that they've got issues with. So you can relate these to other situations as well. So if you've You may have found some of those on the screen that are relevant to yourself, or thought of other statements that you that mean something to you. So please make a note of that as well, because later on it's something we're going to revisit as to what that statement means and how it serves or doesn't serve you. Okay. So the content across the 2 sessions, we're actually doing 2 1-hour sessions. Not yet agreed the date for the next one, but I think all being well, it'll be before the end of the year, but hopefully Lindsay confirm that later on. We're going to look at how to create a healthy habit of conscious thinking. We're going to discuss how mindset is a choice, how we think about any given, how that we think about any given situation ultimately creates the results we achieve. So that's quite a big one, but we'll try and break that down to make more sense. And also, ultimately, it's how to take back control from your anxiety to help you achieve your goals. So today's session, we're going to break it down to cover these things here, including the dangers of the unsupervised mind, what anxiety is and why we experience it. And the reason why we've got that in, you may think, I know what anxiety is, but by actually understanding why we have anxiety helps us to realize that we need to manage it better and make it not be a barrier in our life. So bear with me when we have some things that you think are quite simple. Actually, we need to understand those thoroughly to make sure that it's important at a later date. So we're going to look at how anxiety hinders us, how anxiety can serve us, techniques to counteract anxiety when we experience it. We're going to look at the 4 choices that we have to handle anxiety, including the one that lets you take the power back. And ultimately, we're going to work towards today how you can overcome your freelance anxiety. And then also at the end of the session, we're allowing 10 minutes or so to a live one-to-one coaching session. Now, I'd appreciate that I'm putting you on the spot, but I would like somebody to, when I come another 40 minutes or so into the session, to volunteer to do some live one-to-one coaching. Now, by doing this, it will demonstrate how a life coach, that the role myself in, and Carolyn, who's on the call as well, the kind of techniques we use to help you to recognize and eventually overcome issues that hold us back in our life. So if nobody does want to do it, I'm not going to force anybody to do it. I know Lindsay's prepared to step in if nobody else does as well. But again, no pressure on anybody, but it would be good to think about it now. So the next session, we're going to look at how we think about any given situation ultimately creates results we achieve. So moving on from what we're going to cover today. We're going to look at how to identify negative self-beliefs and how to replace negative self-beliefs with positive ones. Because lots of anxiety comes down to the belief that we have, what we believe we can achieve, how we view the world, how we view our life and our abilities. So it's important to flip that negative to a positive, which can be achieved as well. And again, ultimately, how to overcome your freelance anxiety. Okay. End of the next session as well, we're also going to see about doing another live one-to-one coaching session. So you were told when you were sent the invitations out to this, I think the reminders today more so mentioned the offer of free one-to-one sessions, which myself and Caroline, who's also on the call, will be available to provide. At the end of the session, I'm going to give the details that you need to actually access that free support that's been offered. And I'll give you more details at the end of the session. So a couple of minutes just talking about me to give you a bit of context. That's my lovely mug on the screen there. Rob Green is my name. And I've got a background of teaching. I've got over 15 years education experience working as a teacher. And I've also qualified as a freelance life coach. My specialist area is working in fulfillment. So people who have unfulfilled lives, who have barriers that can't achieve their dreams and push past where they are, challenges that come across them on a daily basis or a one-off situation that they achieve. And that's my particular role I support individuals with. And I've got a real passion for self-development for myself and also for others. And it's something I seem to have had all of my life. I really feel a value of getting the best out of your life because you're only here once. And for me, helping other people to achieve things, some of the things that I've worked with people for, it's just wonderful to see people achieve. And I'd like to have the opportunity to do so with yourself as well. So before we get into the thick of it, I want to talk to you about taking action. Knowledge is wonderful. Knowledge is a brilliant thing. So having a knowledge on how to achieve or do something is excellent, but only if you apply it. And what I mean by this is, during this session, I'm going to tell you some things, some techniques, provide you with information that hopefully make you think a little differently about anxiety and how you manifest anxiety into your life. But that knowledge is useless unless you actually take action in order to make a change, because knowing it will not do the job. You've got to take the action. So I'm going to ask you that, assuming that you like what I teach, are you willing to take action? If you'd like to test out the chat bar now and give me a yes or definitely, or any, I'll be looking for positive answers only. Please, can you just test out the chat bar, if nothing else, to make sure we know that it's working, that everybody has access to it. And I've already got one from Lindsay. Thank you, Lindsay, with the yes. Would everybody else please like to just test out on the chat bar and just let me know you are committed, that you are wanting to take action for yourself. Cool. Got some yeses coming through now, which is wonderful. Okay. Just let me check my notes one moment. Okay. Right, so we shall move on to the next slide then. Got a few more yeses coming, which is great. So all I've got to do is give you something that you do like and you do want to know. So that's my challenge, which is accepted. So going to introduce something to you now called the unsupervised mind. So it's taking things back to quite a basic level, but it's the kind of thing that, as I say, it's basic. It's until you actually realize or think about things, you don't know that they exist or that is the case. But when you are aware, it almost becomes obvious. So I'm going to share that first of all with the unsupervised mind. So I'm going to ask you first of all, and feel free to put in the chat bar if you want to, but is there anybody here on this call who would knowingly leave a toddler or young child at home unsupervised for the day while you go out and do your business? And then while you're out, you'll expect that toddler, if you knowingly left the toddler there, expect them to take care of themselves, to cook for themselves, make the house all nice and tidy, keep it clean, keep it organized, so that when you came home, all was peaceful, all was free from harm, and the house was in order. So would anybody consider leaving a toddler at home knowing that that's a safe option to do? Well, of course, that's a loaded question. The answer is clearly no. And the reason being is that if you leave a toddler at home, you know that's not a good thing to do at all, because the dangers that child can cause themselves ultimately could be catastrophic. The dangers they can cause to the house, to the equipment, to your lifetime investment into your property and your home and everything in it is just disastrous. So when you come home and go back into your home, the mess you could expect could be, could be unlimited, okay? So it's exactly the same with using our mind. Now, if we are leaving our mind unsupervised, effectively, you are like leaving a toddler at home, but you are leaving a toddler in your mind. What I mean by this is that if you don't supervise your mind, if you just let it do what it's always done, which quite often for many people, most people I would say, it's to cause yourself your own pain, your own agony. It makes a mess, it overthinks, it complicates, it asks questions that are unreasonable. You think that worst case scenario, it makes an absolute mess. And one day you may look into that mind and supervise that mind, and you see that mind and you think, what a mess. How have I allowed this mind to get in such a state? And that's state I'm referring to. I should say at this point, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not, don't quote me fully on some of the things I refer to, but with people who get mental health issues, and I do say not all, because I appreciate they're not all are caused by themselves or their experience. There are other things included there as well. But a lot of people experience mental health issues because they've allowed their mind to become unsupervised, and your brain is the most efficient thing you have. It's a wonderful tool. It's the most powerful tool you've got at your disposal. And it's so efficient, it just does what needs to be done the way it's always been done. It works efficiently, it makes decisions for you without realizing, and this is your subconscious mind. It does things on autopilot. So what we need to do to make sure that we are in control of our mind in order to help us make decisions and to take control of our life is to take back control of that toddler. And we do that by supervising our mind. Because unsupervised, it'll do what it always wants. It repeats bad habits. It can also perpetuate problems as well. And the reference to the child's mind as well relates to how, from when we are born to when we are early years, so up to about 7 years of age, our brain develops faster at the end of the time of our life. And our parents, our teachers, our peers will educate us with their beliefs, with their systems of how you should behave, what you should do, whether you're a good child, whether you're a bad child, whether you deserve things or whether you don't. And once you got that in your mind that that is the case, more often than not, people maintain those beliefs. I referred to the slides at the beginning about negative self-beliefs. We believe the things we're taught as children. When we're children, they serve us because we obey our parents, we stay safe, we come home when we're supposed to, we do our work, we comply with the fit in with our role within our family. But if we maintain that toddler's thoughts and those concepts until we're adults, those thoughts no longer serve us. And it's amazing how many people actually, I mean, myself included, until you're challenged, people maintain those childhood thoughts into their adult life. And this is where people find themselves needing support professionals in order to help them get over blocks and barriers. People that think, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And this also relates to anxiety around, I'm not going to be good enough for the job. What if they don't like me? I'm not going to be able to get what I want. So this is a big way that a life coach will support their clients, is identifying what their false limiting beliefs are and actually rewrite those to beliefs they actually believe in. This is something you can do with yourself, what thoughts you've got, and you can sometimes, not always, relate them back to your childhood as to where those thoughts came from. They served you when you were a child, but they certainly don't serve as an adult. I say they certainly don't. Some of them may. I had a client who mentioned that one of her beliefs was, I'm not breaking confidentiality, by the way, because I'm not saying who it is. She had a belief that she must always serve others. Now, that was a belief instilled in her, but actually was a belief that she actually wanted to have because she was also in a role where she supported people, and that was her life. So not always are they wrong negative beliefs. They can also be positive beliefs as well. So we're going to focus now, moving this towards anxiety. So first of all, we need to understand what anxiety is. Now, I've got the quote here from the NHS. So anxiety is a feeling of unease, such as worry or fear, that could be mild or severe. Everyone has a feeling of anxiety at some point in their life, okay? There's a couple of things I'd like to pick up on here. First of all, in the first sentence, it says anxiety is a feeling, okay? So feeling, therefore, it's an emotion. Anxiety is an emotion that we feel. And where it says unease, that is because it's a negative. Doesn't make it not easy, it's clearly a negative feeling. It refers to everybody having feelings of anxiety at some point in their life. So at this point, it's definitely worth saying that just because you have anxiety doesn't mean that you're different or bad. Everybody has it at some point in their life. Just some people have it more often than others. Some are better at dealing with it than others. So a few points I'll state here is that anxiety is a normal part of being alive. It's part of being human. We as a species have survived and evolved because of it. I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a moment. But even though we have evolved as a species, our experience of anxiety has not. So we've evolved hugely over the last couple of thousand years, but the anxiety and other emotions within us haven't evolved at the same pace as the society we now live in. A key thing about anxiety, and this is, again, if you're making notes, this is a very important one. Anxiety thrives on vagueness. It loves vagueness. If you're in a situation or you've got a thought, which is usually about what's about to happen in the pending future or short down the line future, but the nearer you get, often that anxiety gets worse. And with the vagueness, that's because you don't know what's going to happen. It's uncertain, not sure. Therefore, you've got a list of possibilities, which most are unlikely, but at that moment in time, the anxiety makes you feel that they are likely. But it's because they are vague Anxiety seems to dwell on it and focus on it. So the more vague your situation, the more question marks you've got, quite often anxiety can actually feel worse. One closing point on anxiety I will say is that having anxiety doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. Quite often people can beat themselves up or feel guilty or bad because they're anxious. They think they've done something wrong or they're bad people or something's not quite right. That is not true. It just means you're human. Okay. So moving forward about anxiety, this is getting to understand as to why we have anxiety now and how it hasn't evolved the same pace as humanity has. So as you can see on the screen here, we've got the caveman being chased by the animal. And the reason why he's running as well as his eyes wide open, he's pumped up, is because of anxiety. Anxiety historically has been an emotion, a response that is born out of survival. And we've got in our brain the what we call the reptilian brain, so part of the brain where that part of the brain drives our anxiety. It also helps us with our primal needs. So we've got anxiety, thirst, hunger, sex, and territorial desires, as well as habits. There's something called the procedural memory, which is where you do things repetitively over time out of forming habits, like putting your keys in the same place or riding a bike. You just do it automatically without thinking. Walking as well. So that part of the brain that's not evolved from many, many years ago. So, got a bit to search, so I'm going to go back to that slide there. I'm going to talk about the response that we have when we have anxiety. So back in the day, anxiety was, we sense anxiety when we faced a situation generally that meant serious threat, especially a risk of death. And there were 3 responses that was taken. So imagine this chap on the screen here. He has decided to flight. He's taken a flight response. So you can imagine this is a situation where you have to get out of danger or face that danger to survive. So you have to take the flight option. So to do so, your body gets pumped up with adrenaline, your muscles tense up, you get ready to act, you get short breaths, and you get ready to run away and hide. Okay, so you can imagine you've got to get out of there, and your adrenaline's helping you, and the anxiety helps you because the anxiety drives you and it helps you. And then you do hide, the attacking, whatever that be, saber-toothed tiger on the screen. You manage to escape, and you say to yourself, "Whew, I did the right thing. I survived." And anxiety had saved your life. So that's one way it worked. Another way is the fight response. So again, if you feel you've got a chance, your best chance is to fight the attacker. So it could be another caveman who's attacking you or the animal. Same kind of response, anxiety. It gets your muscles all tense. You get you ready to fight. Your adrenaline floods your body. You change your breathing pattern to short breaths to get ready to attack. The third option is freeze. So this is where people are... sorry, I referred to hiding with the flight. Sorry, the flight was running away. But this is where you're going to freeze. You're going to blend away. And hopefully I'm not seen. Stay still as you can. Whereas you can imagine if you're doing that, again, your muscles are tensing up. You're not breathing as flowing. Can't speak. You don't breathe as naturally, I should say, as you can. So your breathing gets short and shallow. And even that breathing in yourself, it's not a natural way of breathing. The oxygen to your blood all changes, and your whole response system changes to the norm, so that you're heightened just for that short period of time until an animal passes by, and again, whew, I'm alive. Okay, so we are all here today alive thanks to our ancestors who have used anxiety to save themselves in order to pass on the line to us to be alive. Okay. So that's what used to happen, but we live in a completely different world, and you've got to be quite unfortunate nowadays if you do at some point in your life face the risk of being facing death or in a situation where you need to call upon anxiety. And the problem now is that anxiety it seems to manifest and come out in completely different ways. But even in situations such as having some work you've got to get in by tomorrow, or you've got to meet your in-laws for the first time, or you've got to go to a social activity that you're not too familiar with because it's a fancy, posh one. So we still get the same feelings, and that is anxiety, but they don't serve us to keep us alive. But what we do on our head is we perceive that as danger. This is danger. And those thoughts that we have are telling us we are in danger. So therefore, we have the response to anxiety like the caveman used to have. Okay? So our anxiety we have now doesn't serve to keep us alive. You could argue in many ways that the anxiety stops us from actually living. So this is where we get into the process of, well, how do we use anxiety? How will it benefit us ongoing? So we talked about how anxiety would help ongoing, but this is another time I'm going to ask you to write down a question about how do you manifest your anxiety? So what I mean by this is when you're feeling anxious, what do you do? What are your patterns? Okay. Quite often you will have go-to anxieties. Sometimes you may react differently. So we're going to ask if anybody would like to pop those anxieties on the chat bar, but I'm not going to insist on it because it is private, it's personal yourself. If you want to keep it that way, if you're happy to share, then please do pop it onto the chat bar. Okay. I'm just going to go on the chat bar, see if anybody has any more questions yet, but I don't think we have, so that's all good. Okay. This is a question for yourself, which you're welcome to share if you want to. Your answer will fall into one of two parts, okay? Physically and psychologically, and it can be a combination of the two. So I'm going to go through these without quite relatively rapidly. There is my mouse. Okay. So you can show physical symptoms such as headaches, the breathing issues, palpitations. The symptoms of addictions, which will be clear on the next page as well. Increased blood pressure. You get more aches and pains and more likely to have fatigue, because when you are pumped up and you're experiencing your body tensing and your heart's going and your blood pressure, you're going to get, it's not a natural position to hold yourself in when you feel anxious. And there's also psychological symptoms such as depression, irritability, loss of libido, addictions, okay, such as overeating, overdrinking, abusing the internet, gaming, drugs, so on and so forth. And that's when those addictions can affect your physical self as well. And of course, the ultimate one is losing control. So losing control of your life is the ultimate. Okay, so how you live life, your decisions you make, your choices, your relationships, your finances. So it can all escalate. So everyone has got a different scale from mild anxiety to severe as well. Okay, but they all manifest themselves in different ways. And on the screen here, there's just an image of just showing some other things that you or other people may experience. Now, what I will say at this point is that when you meet somebody who's got anxiety, it isn't always possible to see that they have anxiety, because a lot of people can have them in their head or keep them to themselves as well. So it's not something that's visible that can be seen as well. So when you see somebody, you think they're keeping the cool, they're not anxious, you can't tell just by looking at them. So moving forward. Okay, so this is another question that I would like you to look at for yourself. You as an individual, if you could live a career without anxiety getting in your way, how would it make you feel? Okay, so some suggestions are, the simple answers are relaxed, in control, calm and curious. But what I'd like you to do is take a moment on your notebook or your piece of paper you've got, just write a sentence, answer the question. How would you feel with an anxious-free career? Okay, so put it into a sentence rather than just one-word answers. So just picture yourself with no anxiety. So going back to the first page when we said how your anxiety, the words that we have about my contract ends, when the next job going to come, I'm going to have to take on the next job that I want. If you weren't driven by anxiety to make those thoughts, to think these things that are often irrational and quite often the bad choices, I won't say they're always, but depending on the situation, but how would you feel with an anxious-free career? So hopefully you've you've been structuring a sentence or making a few notes. Okay, that's a very important thing, because this in time is going to, you can develop to be your target, your goals that you want to work towards. So if you were able to be free from those symptoms of anxiety, this is the career that you would drive to work towards. It'd be your motivation, your target to work towards. And when you've got there, that's when you know you've achieved it. Okay. So if anyone, again, please feel free to comment or ask any questions. More than happy to do so if you want to do that ongoing. So we shall move forward onto the next slide with how anxiety affects us. I'm going to tell a short story about how anxiety affects us using the example of dogs. And the reason why I've chosen dogs, I don't want to choose the freelance editor's example, because that's personal to you, and you can use this story to relate it to how you use anxiety or how it affects you. So quite a common thing that people are anxious about are dogs. So let's assume that you've got a fear of dogs. And let's say that you walk to the same shops using the same route, let's say down the road, round the corner and through a ginnel. And it's the same route you take all the time, because it's the most direct route. It's the route you know, and it gets to where you want to go, and use exactly the reverse route on the way home. Now, let's say one day on your walk, you see that one of the residents on the route right next to the ginnel that you cut down, the shortcut to the shops, you see they've got a dog. And that dog is in the front garden and it is barking. Now, many of us may see the dog as normal, but on the picture there, some of you with fear may see that dog that has got a, so just saying bye to Kirsty. Oh, ginnel's a northern word. Okay, ginnel's, thank you, Lindsay. Ginnel's a cut through. So if you're going through a row of houses and then there's a gap in the middle, it's a shortcut, a cut through. So if you cut through, so if you've got a fear of dogs, even though the rest of the world may see a nice, cute little doggy, if you've got a fear of dogs, you may see this vicious beast. So on this time, rather than taking the shortcut you always take, you decide, you know what? I'm going to stay alive, because the anxiety is kicked in. Your heart started to beat. So you've decided this time I'm going to go the long way around, just so that I don't have to face the risk that dog could bite me. It looks like it's got sharp teeth. And you go to the shop, do your shopping, and then on the way back, you realize I need to go all the way back round, and I need to go home safely and avoid that dog. Now, when you get home, you know you're free from that dog. You can't see it anymore. It isn't there. It can't get you. So your brain tells you, well done. You made a good decision. You kept me alive. That was wonderful. The dog did not bite me. Even though it was a longer walk, it was worth it. Okay. So next time you go to the shops, before you even leave your front door, before you maybe even put your shoes on, coat on, in your mind, you're thinking, oh my God, that dog's going to be there again. Okay, and you start having in your head that anxiety about something that may or may not even happen yet, and you start working yourself up about it. Your heart starts to go. The anxiety is really driving through you with the adrenaline pumping you up. You may start getting sweaty. So you get the picture. So and then you go for that walk, and who knows, that dog may or may not be there, but the anxiety has got you before you've even got to where the dog is or was. So this is how anxiety affects us. So we can see at the top of the screen here, we have the experience where we get the anxiety. Okay, so this is where the first time ever you see this dog on your journey. Therefore, you avoid that danger. When you get home, you think, yay, fantastic, and you get a short-term relief. That was a good choice. But what you're doing is you're growing your anxiety, so that the next time you go to that shop, you remember that dog and you're anxious ahead of time. And that goes in a loop, and it continually happens until it self-perpetuates. Effectively, it gets worse and worse. Now, what I will say here, and this is a key thing with anxiety, this is a completely different session all around mindset. But the second time, even the first time to a lesser degree, but the second time you go to that shop, you're experiencing anxiety before you even know the dog's going to be there. Now, the dog could have been visiting from, it could have been a friend who brought the dog over. It could be somebody dog sitting for one day. there could be a number of reasons how that dog's there, but you automatically next visit think worst case scenario, the dog will be there. There's a good chance it could bite me. It's not the dog that causes the anxiety. It's the thought of the dog that causes anxiety. And this is a key point, because what we realize then is that it's the thought of the danger that causes our anxiety in most circumstances in our life. So going back to the caveman times, if somebody was to attack you on the streets or come running at you looking vicious, you could argue you're entitled to be anxious and that anxiety will save your life, okay? But the anxiety we live with commonly in this day and age is the anxiety where you get ready to go to the shops, or you go for that routine event, or you do something you've done a dozen times before, but this time because things are different, because you're coming towards the end of your job, because your contract's expiring and you've not one planned yet, then it's the thought about that time that causes anxiety, not the actual gap between work itself or the job that's going to come next itself, because that isn't even here yet. So it's very important at this point that you are aware it's the thought of the situation that causes the anxiety. Okay. Just going to check any messages. No, we're all good. So hopefully you've now all, if nothing else, you've learned a new word, ginnel. You can use that one and throw into conversation tomorrow and see what they say. Right. So next slide. Wait for it to catch up with me. Okay. So this is a quote from a lady called Byron Katie, which if you are aware of mindfulness and self-development, she's one of the biggest roles. And this is a quote that I use very often with my clients. It's not the problem that causes our suffering, it's our thinking about the problem. Okay, because quite often the problem hasn't come, you are making a problem. So I don't mean to be patronizing anybody on this, please make that clear. But it's just the mindset of being aware. The anxieties are thinking about the problem, not the problem itself. So when we do experience anxiety, now I'm going to talk about 4 approaches towards it. Okay. On the screen here, the first one is resist. Now this is relative to the fight reaction. If we sense anxiety, so we've had that thought and we worry about what's going to happen with that mental turmoil, one of the decisions people make, and this is the subconsciously your toddler brain will think about actually fighting that thought. Whoops, I've moved on a slide too soon. About fighting the anxiety. Now, the anxiety is emotion that we've created with our thoughts. So if we fight with an emotion created by our thoughts, we're fighting our own thoughts. So what happens is that you are taking one negative in your mind and you're doubling it. So what I would say, this is like if you see a fire, you don't want to put it out by throwing petrol on it, because that's effectively what you're doing. So you're fighting yourself in turmoil, and you can't win. You can't use one thought in your mind to battle another thought in your mind within your mind. It won't work. It'll just make you angst, angry, frustrated. It won't actually solve the problem. So that's the resist. That's a common go-to option that people take. The next one is react. Now, when you react to anxiety, what you're actually doing is you're becoming the embodiment of it. So people that are getting anxious, they get frustrated, they get ratty, they'll get short with people, they can get frustrated and slam things down, slam doors. Those of you who may have got teenagers can relate to that one. They become the embodiment of their anxiety, which again, isn't going to solve it, but they sometimes feel justified that they've said what they said or had that argument because I feel this way, therefore it's okay. It's not my fault. It's that problem. The situation has made me like this, which again, doesn't solve the problem. Another choice is avoid. Nope, if I do this wrong, right? Sorry. Where's my notes? Sorry. The next one is avoid. Yes, avoid. So the avoidance is where you are actively choosing to ignore the anxiety. The same goes with this one, and to a degree the others, of where you ignore your emotions. You hear about people suppressing their emotions. They don't want to talk about it, don't want to think about it. It hurts, therefore I'll push it away. And they'll do things to actually avoid facing the emotion. This is where people have a habit of doing a distraction, such as overeating, overdrinking, misusing the internet, getting into trouble, because they're distracting themselves. If they're doing all these other things, they don't have to deal with the problem, which is the anxiety resulting from the thoughts about a situation they're in or facing. A good example for this I always give is avoiding an emotion is like being in the ocean up to your chest in water with a beach ball. Okay, so that beach ball is the emotion. If you try and hold that beach ball underwater, you can only do so for so long. And eventually, because you've forgotten about it, your hands relax, and then the beach ball pops up, bangs you straight in the face, quite often when you're least expecting it, because you've forgotten about it. And then it can cause you problems, because if you're in a social situation or a delicate part of your life, that emotion hits you, that's the last thing you want to add on top of potentially a situation that you're in that you could do without that happening. So they're often the three that the toddler brain, the lizard brain will go to. And that's the subconscious choosing that. And the fourth one, this is the one that I'm encouraging that you work on. So this is another way of how you are managing your anxiety. It's the one that would be recommended that would benefit you, not just for the short term, for that anxiety at that moment, but for long term. And that is to accept anxiety. Okay. Now, quite often people are quite shocked saying, well, how should I accept it? It doesn't serve me. It's not good for me. Why should I accept it? And the reason for this is that it's not just accepting, it's actively accepting it. It's making a process of, in your mind, of choosing and justifying the reasons yourself to reaffirm why it's important to accept, which I'll talk through in a moment. Ultimately, it's about taking that power back from your toddler brain and taking ownership. So by allowing it to be there, you effectively are getting authority over it. It doesn't own you, you own it. So this is one of the first steps, is that you actually take ownership, because you could argue, well, it's still there, still don't like it, but it's here. It's like having an unwelcome guest in your party. If it's there without being invited, you can get frustrated and annoyed by it once you know it's there. But if you actually say, you know what, come on in, you could be here. You're not my favorite party guest, but you're here now and I don't want to ruin the party. So, come on in and mingle. By taking authority and owning it, you will find in time, with the supervision of your mind, that you'll get a sense of perspective over the anxiety and actually a sense of relief, because you will be able to control your thoughts so that they become more rational. So remember that anxiety is an emotion, and that an anxiety effectively is harmless. It's your thoughts that are what's doing the danger. So it's the thoughts that we need to be looking at, not so much the anxiety. The anxiety is the consequence of your thoughts. So the anxiety, if you think about it, is there because of you've invited it through your negative thoughts. So again, just remind you, anxiety is a natural reaction to humans. Don't feel bad. If you identify you've got anxiety, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't be negative or criticize yourself. That's not going to work, okay? Also, you shouldn't think that just because you've accepted it, that's okay. I've accepted it now, it can go away, go away. It doesn't work like that. You've got to get to know it. And this is something that you will develop over time by doing so. So, just check we're okay for time, which we are. Wonderful. So, again, pen and paper out. Please make a note of this. If it's something, you really need to try it to actually appreciate it. It's again, it's just, at the moment, it's just words. You're learning something, but you need to actually practice it. There are 4 stages. Once you've accepted the anxiety, the first thing you need to do is name it. Now, what I mean by this is actually realizing that you have anxiety, because you can have anxiety for a while. You can have any emotion for a while automatically, but not realize you're experiencing it. So by actually recognizing this is this emotion is anxiety. I am experiencing anxiety. Just by naming it in the first place, you are saying to your that in your head, I can see you, I've noticed you're here. Because quite often anxiety can happen for a long time before you see it. And the sooner you name it, that's the first step you need to make. So as soon as you can, don't skip this as the first step you need to do. The next thing you need to do, so we've got on the screen here, top left, got recognize. The next one is choice. This is where you've realized you've got anxiety, but you realize also that, remember, you've got a choice of which of those four you're going to take: resist, react, avoid, and accept. So I would say at this point, how am I reacting to it? What choice am I making? Now, you may think I'm not making a choice, it's just happening. So it's what choice is your toddler brain making on your behalf? And is that the choice that you want to make? Is that the choice you've always made? So again, you supervise your mind and see what's happening and question, how am I reacting to the anxiety? Okay. The next one, bottom left, is to observe. So we say observe with this one. What we mean is observe your mind, see what thoughts you're making, because you've recognized it's anxiety. You know you've got a choice of how to deal, which you'll be working towards accepting it. But by observing your mind, you can see, well, what am I thinking that's making me feel anxious? Because we've agreed already, hopefully you've bought in, very importantly, that your emotions are driven by the thoughts you have. So to recognize you've got anxiety, you must be having thoughts that generate the anxiety. Now, again, these may be subconscious thoughts, they may be conscious, but what I would suggest is, even though you may have one or two conscious thoughts, there may be a few subconscious thoughts that are egging the anxiety on to bring forward. So my recommendation for this is do something called a thought download. Okay. So if you do feel you're finding anxious and you want to observe it, see what questions you're doing, is just find somewhere quiet, sit down. If you're familiar with meditating, you may meditate, but the other thing you do is sit down quietly and just think, what am I thinking that's making me feel this way? And you will write a list of all the questions you're asking. For example, I'm never going to get another job as good as this, or there's barely any jobs out there. What chance have I got of getting one? And so forth. Remember that word vagueness that we touched upon earlier on about anxiety. You will realize that there's the more vagueness, and lots of vagueness will drive more questions that chances are when you're done, you will look back, and this is the purpose, you will look back at those questions you've written down and you'll realize, well, there's no wonder I'm anxious thinking like that. And ultimately, that's what you're doing. You are making yourself anxious because of what you may and hopefully will realize are thoughts that are completely irrational. Some of them will be worst case scenario questions. That worst case scenario, if back in the caveman days, was death being eaten by that saber-toothed tiger. Now we are putting that worst case scenario in situations which the chances of those happening quite often when we use our rational mind, when we supervise our adult mind, you realize that quite often they are irrational. The questions just come up there. Okay. So actually observing, seeing basically ask yourself, what am I thinking that's making me feel this way ultimately? And finally is the supervise. Okay. So by supervising your mind and you accept these are the thoughts I'm having, this is the, these are thoughts I'm having, I'm experiencing anxiety, and I will accept that my anxiousness is a result of what I'm thinking. My anxiety isn't the problem. My anxiety can stay. My thoughts are what are the problem. And by changing my thoughts, my anxiety will fade. Okay. By doing this, you will discover that anxiety is an emotion that you can control, and that ultimately, through supervising your mind to replace the thoughts you're observing, to come up with better thoughts that better serve you, more rational thoughts, ones that will drive you positively rather than through fear, you will be able to take control of your anxiety. Okay. Now, much easier said than done. It's something that does need practice. And I always say with practice, it's like learning to play guitar. You can go to a guitar lesson and your instructor can show you how to play guitar and you can play the chords like they say to. But if you then don't practice the guitar until the next session, or the next time you decide to do something, another musical instrument, you may realize that I never learned guitar because I never practiced it. It's the same with overcoming anxiety. If you don't practice it, you won't overcome it. One point I will say here, however, is don't expect your anxiety to stop altogether. Okay, your anxiety is part of being human. You will always feel anxiety. Your anxiety will come up. What you have the power to do is manage that anxiety when it appears. And the more often and more au fait you are with following this process of recognize, choice, observe, and supervise to accept your anxiety, every time it comes along, you will feel better managed to actually control it and alleviate it. So please don't think anxiety is something you can cure, something that will go away, something will stop, but it was something that you can take control of so that it won't hamper your life in the way that it has. What I will say again, just a reminder as well, is when you do find yourself feeling anxious and you realize I can control myself, don't get angry with yourself, because that will not help. Because anger, again, being a negative emotion, you're adding another negative emotion onto a current negative emotion as you're doubling your issue. So have compassion with yourself. Okay. So I'm hoping that's clear. I know that's a lot to take on board there in such a short period of time. But hopefully you've got enough to go away and think about and really focus on having a go with yourself and see how you get on. So let me just click on. Just briefly here, only for a moment, the comfort zone, something you may or may not have come across before. People like living in their comfort zone because it's the way you feel safe and in control, something you've always done. So if you keep on doing it, I'm not going to put myself at risk. I'm encouraging you to grow into your growth zone, where you are going to achieve your new goals. At the beginning, I said about setting your goals for your anxious-free life, anxious-free career. These are your goals you're going to work towards, okay? They may open up new opportunities to you, give you new options of realizing your dreams. But to get there, you have to learn, and often to learn, you have to go through the fear zone. So this is the point where many people go into the fear zone, realize this isn't comfortable for me, don't like it, I'm going to go back to where I was, but you will never achieve your growth zone. But what we're saying is that when you grow, you have to be prepared to go through the fear zone and the learning zone, which can be painful. So another example is going to the gym. You want to build your muscles, you've got to go to gym, work hard, sweat, commitment, go through it. Same with your mind. Treat your mind like a muscle, and this activity is like a muscle. You've got to practice it in order to make it work. Okay. So I'm conscious that I want to leave some time at the end for a live one-to-one session. So I'm going to double check, see if any more comments came up. I don't think they did. I hope that's all been good for you so far. If you've got questions, please put them on there. But I'm now going to ask if anybody would like to volunteer to spend 7 or 8 minutes with me just before the session to an end, just to do a live chat. I'm trying to see how I can bring myself back up again. Okay. Would anybody in this group feel they want to spend 5 or 6 minutes talking to me about a anxiety related issue they're facing at work, ideally work, so would benefit other else could relate to it? Would anybody on the chat bar like to say they would? If so, please put a yes. No pressure, don't feel it. Finish off.
Yep, it's recording.
All righty, so with that session over, I just want to see about bringing this session to a close. There we are. So I just want to do a recap of what we've covered today. We've looked at the dangers of an unsupervised mind, the damage it can cause. We've looked at what anxiety is and why we experience it. We've looked at how anxiety hinders us. The one thing I seem to skip there is how anxiety can serve us. Okay, it can serve us, I did touch upon, if we do face a life-threatening situation, so an attacker on the street, anxiety can serve us in that manner because that's what it's designed to do. But research also shows that some people thrive on anxiety when it comes to meeting deadlines. The kind of person that can't start writing an assignment until midnight before it's due in. So in some people, anxiety gives you that boost. You need that adrenaline. So not for me, but for some people, it's good for them. But that's the only benefits of anxiety, what it was historically designed to do for us to keep us alive and also help us meet deadlines. So we've also discussed techniques to counter act anxiety when you experience it. There are more as well, by the way. I've only just touched on a bit of it, so please don't think that this is it. There is more than this, but this is one of the key messages as well. We've looked at the 4 choices on how to handle anxiety. So resist, react, avoid, which is what our toddler brain does, which generally doesn't work. Final one being accept it, which is the one choice that lets you take the power back. And we've also got, I'm just looking for a chat that's just come up as well, seems relevant. Yes, John, you're right, it is pressure, thank you. And ultimately, it's all about targeting how you should overcome your freelance anxiety. And we've also done the live one-to-one coach session as planned as well. So it's going to touch upon the next slide, come on. So what I want you to do for yourself, so please, now we know it's going to be shared on the website, but it's just a challenge for yourself, really. And again, one thing in life coaching, what we always do is towards the end of the session, I say always, generally, we'll set challenges which you are free to choose, but they're given with the intention to actually put into practice what's been covered. So I want you to identify how you manifest anxiety. So how it comes out in you, how you react, how are you different. But it can also be, that Friday night feeling when you hit the bottle. People talk about, that's what they need. Oh, I need to get a drink to chill out from the day. Arguably, that is one way of avoiding anxiety, amongst other ways, like I said, overeating, binge eating, things like that. So the other thing to ask you, and you can do this ahead of time, you don't have to wait till you're anxious. When you are anxious, and I'm talking about work, but you can relate it to your personal or other parts of your life. When you are anxious, what thoughts am I having to create the anxiety? That's a game changer when you realise, my God, I'm thinking all of this stuff, how crazy is a lot of the reaction will be to it. I want you to supervise your mind and question, what else has your toddler mind been up to? So if you've not been supervising your mind, go and see what's going on up there, okay? Be prepared for what you may find. Don't always get to see things until you're in different situations. But one of the key things in life coaching is doing this. It's actually identifying your mind, to identify why you keep doing these things over again, why you always get to this situation in life and you mess things up, or you make wrong choices, or choose the wrong man, choose the wrong woman, do the bad thing. And it's that toddler mind, okay? So I would really encourage you to practice accepting your anxiety and taking authority over it. Okay, I also told you at the beginning of the session that I say we, because Karen's on this call as well, a fellow coach, are offering some free one-to-one sessions, and that's for everybody who is on this session, watching this recording. It's also going to be if you've got other people in your group. I'm sure Carol won't mind me as well, but for anybody who you feel would benefit from it, okay? So as part of that one-to-one session, it would be one completely private, confidential, as you'd expect, whereby you would discuss what your needs are, your anxieties are. We also cover other areas, not just anxiety, but specifically for this program. And it will allow you to identify other things that could help you, and identify how you react the way you do and what you can do to change your reaction to anxiety, to really take a better control of your life. Now, ultimately, I said that one of the activities I got you to do is write down how you would like to live an anxiety-free life. That is what a life coach can help you work towards, okay? Now, when I say a life coach can help you, ultimately, it's you. You're the one who has to do all the hard work. You're the one who has to answer the question, to find the answer within your head. A life coach is a tool that will help you to do that. So I'm going to pop on the chat bar so you can copy and paste. Let me move that off. Where are we? I really need to stop sharing my screen and go to the chat bar if I can find it. Where's the chat bar gone? Chat, there we are. So I'm going to copy and paste in the chat bar. I'm going to put my calendar, my electronic calendar. Now this is, you can go in there and you can select a time. Has that gone in? Yep, there's my I forget the last dot. We'll do that again because I think I've put another line in there that shouldn't have worked, so it won't work. Enter. Oh, it's the same. So you click on there, you'll see my calendar and you can select a time slot. They're all in time slots of an hour, but for this kind of session, you're probably looking at half hour up to 45 minutes, whereby you can choose a time that suits yourself. It's done via Zoom. So when you're booked, you'll also get an invitation with the Zoom details. So it's obviously doesn't matter that you're 100 miles away. You could do it while on holiday on the beach if you want to. So that is my link to my calendar. And I'm also going to put on here my email address. You see my website on the slide as well. It's evolvelifecoach.com. Let me go back to my screen. Okay, I'll put on here my email address. So you can email me as well. Oh, forget the typo. I'll put a typo on that one. That's rob@evolvelifecoach.com. And then finally, we've got Carolyn on the call today. She's a fellow life coach. Now, it may well be that when you look on my calendar, there's no times or dates that work to serve myself. I've only got a few days on there on a regular basis. But if they don't suit yourself, Carolyn, I'm sure, will be able to accommodate you. And I'm going to put her email on the screen as well. Now, Carolyn is also a qualified and experienced life coach, and I wouldn't be giving you her details if I didn't think that she would be able to serve you in anxiety, something she's very proficient in as well. Okay. So we've got a little bit over time, but hopefully you'll forgive me. Hopefully you find it was all worthwhile. And I want to say a big thank you to Lindsay, but also the BFE for inviting me to do this with you. I really hope you got something from it. If you want to benefit from myself or Carolyn's time, please get in touch. We'll be happy to help. Just look on the chats there. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please put them on there. I'm going to be the last person to go, and chances are Lindsay as well. So if you're happy with what we've covered today, just take anything from it. I'm happy. If you do want to stay on, I'll be happy to stay on for a minute or two as well to answer any questions. Like I say, I'm sure me and Lindsay will be the last people on here. So you're welcome, Andy. Thank you for your comment. Zeb also as well. E. Franks, sorry, Mr. or Mrs. Franks. You are more than welcome. So feel free, enjoy your evening. John, enjoy your wine.
I'm just going to say thank you, Rob, for a very interesting evening. And Lindsay for setting it up.
I agree. Thank you so much.